If you want the highest agency version of life and growth, then you're going to need to grow on purpose in between these tragic events. And so the whole game then is, can you...
Welcome to the Eat, Play, Crush podcast. I am your host, Mary Shanuda. Giving the camera good old cheers.
Yeah, that's right. It's mountain spring water, not just any mountain spring water.
All right, Logan.
We're here.
I am excited to have you on for so many reasons.
Really?
Yeah, you're like a mythical creature in Venice.
Mythical? It's just hard to nail down. Not that exciting, just because I'm like hard to get a hold of. That doesn't mean I'm like important.
But it's always like, oh, there's a Logan sighting in Venice, which is amazing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I am not hard to find. I do find that, yeah. You get a lot of waves, a lot of honks.
I'm honored to have you on. And because I know you not so well. I know you well enough where I'm like, well, there's this story and that story in your body of work. And I was thinking about how I wanted to frame the conversation last night, taking notes, and I started to get really emotional.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, like I was like, oh, shit, I might cry in this interview. And I was trying to figure out why that is.
Making people cry is my core business. That's what I do.
Your leadership style and your presence and who you are creates safety for other people in leadership. So I realized I don't get a chance to not be in a leadership position around many people. And you're one of the few where I don't have to be like this. And then as soon as I go like this, I'm like, I've got some stuff I want to talk about. And I wanted to explore what makes you that and then get into your book, Going Right, for anyone that's not on the video.
That whole thing. Yeah,
Logical justification for pursuing your dreams. But how would you? I don't want to call you anything. So how would you introduce yourself today?
Oh, that's so funny. I was thinking about this on the way over. I'm like, because I feel like I've done quite a bit of podcasts, but it's like been a while, and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to like figure out like who I am before I start this thing. What's my job? Like,
we could figure it out in the episode.
Yeah, we'll figure it out over the next 90 minutes. Yeah, not in a avoidant way of like, oh, I can't be boxed in kind of response. That's not really how I look at it. But I do resonate with the question. You're like, what is this guy,
Which I think is the goal.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the goal. It was my goal, I guess is one way to say it. As a young person, I distinctly decided that it mattered to me that I would never make a resume. And so I think with that comes a lot of like making stuff up, which is kind of what I do.
You're in a good space for making shit up as you go.
I know you resonate with that. So, I mean, from a practical sense, I would say I'm an entrepreneur. How that's manifested is like there's several different ways. I have this brand of gyms that is probably a conversation that is usually what these kinds of things are about, but I don't...
Deuce Gym.
Yeah, Deuce Gym. I don't think that is my pinnacle work, though. I spend a lot of time consulting and coaching leadership as a concept, which is an ironic thing to talk about because I don't think you're really ever in a position to do that if you don't have skin in the game. And so the gym and other business ventures, I have a digital creative agency that does work in a completely different world. Those are experiments in leadership and how to build something that I feel grateful that you described the feeling around me the way that you did. I'm not necessarily trying to do that with you, but I am trying to do that with these businesses.
Right.
Which is like, can you build a container that if you're inside of it, you would be willing and able to venture towards your edge. So that's like the rich part of this all. This is all the excuse for why a gym, why an agency, why write a book. I think that's what gets me out of bed is like, why are we here? I think we're here to evolve, and there's many different ways to do that. I just so happen to pick strength and conditioning and marketing and teaching seminars, it's just random.
And then being in the shadows through the
Yeah,
process throughout Venice.
being a notorious introvert, just living the life of an extrovert.
The way we met too, I know you've heard me tell this story many times,
Yeah.
and I'll say it one more
I'm
time for the
here for it.
podcast.
Yeah.
So I just moved down from San Francisco, just left my corporate
Yeah.
gig to pursue being a performance chef under the name Paleo Chef.
Mm-hmm.
And Carl Paoli
Mm-hmm.
and our other friend, am I forgetting our friend's name?
Omid.
Omid.
Yeah, Omid. Yeah.
They don't know each other, or they didn't. I actually introduced them, but separately from them
Yeah.
knowing each other, they both sat me down before I left San Francisco,
Yeah.
very concerned for how I was going to make friends in Los Angeles.
Big mean world out here.
I'm not trying to neg myself, and I don't think I'm difficult, but I'm different.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm venturing into this thing that's a little bit scary, and I didn't have anywhere to live. I didn't really have a plan. I was like, let's pursue the magic on the other side of fuck it.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them separately said, when you get to Los Angeles and you get to Venice, you got to pull up to this Deuce Gym and ask for Logan.
Wow.
And part of it had to also do with like my romantic and psychological love of baseball.
Mm-hmm.
It's very well known how I feel about baseball. So like go to Deuce, find Logan.
Yeah.
So I remember calling you, being like, here's what I need. I need private training. I was told to come to the gym. You had a great chat with me. You also don't walk around like you own the gym.
Mm-hmm.
You just seem like you're someone that goes to the gym, right?
My favorite question at the gym is, how long have you been working out here? And I just say, a long time.
But I pull up, and my street that I lived in San Francisco was Commonwealth.
Oh, wow.
And I pull up, and if you want to believe in that kind of stuff, I go, I'm home. This is amazing.
Epic. Okay. I'm down with the stars aligning like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm still waiting for the rest of my stars to align. Sometimes they play tricks on me.
Same.
But I go in, we're training. You make it clear you don't really love one-on-one training.
Yeah, I think I was committed to never doing that again, and you brought me out of retirement.
Right. For like 2 sessions, and you're like, no, I'm going back into it. And then I was like, all right, well, I don't love group training, but I'll try it.
Right.
I tried one group session. I called you. I'm like, there's a 100% chance I'm not coming back for group stuff.
That's right.
Donate my 6
See you
months to
later.
someone else. It was just so funny to me how Deuce, like you go into Deuce, and it's not a normal gym, right? It feels very intimidating until you cross that threshold and you realize it's a community of misfits, if you will, where if you don't fit anywhere else, you belong here.
Totally. I think that what you just described is the intention of that container thing I was mentioning before, right? It's like from the outset, a little bit of like the vision here was, could you make a space where anyone who goes inside of the space would aspire to their highest self, almost like a little bit of a burden, And I think that feeling is captured there because of the diversity of the people doesn't really make sense.
It is very diverse.
And but then it does, because if that is the point, we're just aspiring to be our best selves. And like, if you're willing to participate in that vulnerable thing, then like you're fully in. Like you could be famous or homeless or some place in between. And it makes for a nice connection and a conversation. And I think also, to Carl and Omid's point, Los Angeles doesn't do a great job of putting community on a platter. That context is not built in anywhere here. I think we're all a bit wanting that. And sort of like, well, who's going to go first? Who's going to like create the party for that? So hopefully we're creating a little party in there in Venice.
Yeah, it's the actual manifestation of inclusivity the way that it's meant to be.
Yeah.
But I mean, from there, I felt like I let you down.
Why?
Well, I don't know if you also remember, fast forward a little bit, we're at the CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
And you were chowing down on Fat Fudge, and you went to Drew and you said, is there any way we can protect this company? And I'm still in this position where like, I want to be a part of a we. I want to be a part of a us. I was a tennis player and then tech sales and then private chef, all these solo roles. And I'm supporting a bigger entity, but I've always been easily forgotten, which is why I want to make somebody the best meal ever. So you'll never forget me.
Right.
But you said we, and I was like, what?
Yeah,
And
okay.
then I was like, I thought you hated me. And you're like,
No.
hate you? I have a resting dick face.
That's right, I do.
And I
Yeah.
did hear you say that you would describe yourself as an optimist,
Uh-huh.
but also a dick.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
And so I thought I let you down.
no.
For example, I want to talk about the Hold the Standard Summit at some point.
Mhm,
I'm ripe to go there and do that. And the
mhm,
only thing that's delaying me, and like I said, I'm making major changes to my business entities
mhm.
now to create more space and create more time because I don't want to do the Hold the Standard Summit. And yes, as much as I don't want to let myself down, I don't want to let you down.
Oh, well, you haven't let me down, and I
Okay.
can't
Okay.
foresee a world where you do,
Okay.
so
Say it
we'll
again.
hug after. I promise. Like, you gotta put that away. That's not a thing. Yeah, that's a blast from the past. I'm now remembering that conversation. I'm a big we guy, team sport background, so,
Yeah,
I'm a big
yeah,
we
yeah,
guy.
yeah. I think this is something that I actually do as well. Our existence is a mirror to people around us,
Mm,
and then they wanna live up to their potential by virtue of them seeing us in our full expression.
mhm.
And because I'm rarely one-on-one with people that make me feel that way, I think that's why I put myself in positions with these elite athletes at the
Yeah,
1% level,
yeah.
is I wanna expose myself to situations and people that will put the pressure on me, where I'm like,
Mhm.
because I could very easily be like, "Yeah, I'm the shit," and, like, lean
Yeah,
back, but I'm not, and I
yeah.
wanna be around people that challenge me to do that. So you're one of those people when I say I don't wanna let you down, it's like, you definitely shine a light just by existing
Mhm,
on my gap, that white
mhm.
space.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think that your attraction to the high performance teams and people that you kind of orbit around and serve is a phenomenon that is shared with those people as well. I've been fortunate, probably not as often as you, but to be in certain rooms where you're kind of like, "Oh, how did I sneak in here? Everybody's in the Hall of Fame," kind of thing. And I tell this story a lot because I think that there's a great lesson in there. It's like the lower version of myself used to think, in general, that a room like one of those that I'm
Mhm.
describing, where everybody's in the Hall of Fame, we don't need to talk about names or whatever, but it's like those people hang out with those types of people because that's what famous, rich, successful people do. And in this particular example that I'm talking about, I realized, and this is like an awkward segue to the book, I realized that no, that's actually community
Mhm.
for the fewer of us, the smaller group that is willing to vulnerably explore that gap that you just
Mhm.
talked about.
Mhm.
So it's like, oh, whether you make, platinum records or you score, triple doubles on the basketball court or whatever your deal is, there's actually a mutual connection there or respect. We are bonded in many ways, but in one way, that is basically what I'm saying around entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
I'm not a parent, but I would imagine that someone who doesn't have kids saying anything about parenthood to a parent is kind of like, yeah, no, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You know what I mean? If you make something up, file for the LLC, write people checks every month, you know about a thing that is
Mhm.
like unknowable if you don't participate in that,
Mhm.
right? And so
Mhm.
I don't have the same type of businesses that you have, but we are bonded in that. And there's a certain small community in like that vulnerability if
Mhm.
you are willing to find it.
Mhm.
Largely, the book though is in reaction to the bigger community, which is most people are not engaging in that type of vulnerability. They're
Mhm.
actually locking arms on the reasons why we ought to not look
Right.
towards our edge,
Right.
and it can be very isolating
Right.
doing all the things that you've done.
I
You,
just had a call with a Hall of Famer this morning and straight up said to me, he's like, "It's it's hard to say this out loud. I'm lonely."
yeah,
And I'm like, "You're doing something right." And while I don't understand your island of loneliness, you can look at me and my
yeah,
island over here,
it's
like
very similar. Yeah, it's very similar. And that version of the community is important too,
Mhm.
as out of fashion as it might be. It's much less popular.
Mhm.
But we need each other, especially if we want to create a world where people are being truly vulnerable and willing to engage in that.
Yeah.
You know.
I struggle with finding the community that is at the level I'm in.
Hmm.
I'm in this weird purgatory
Hmm.
space where it's difficult to talk to the group here because they have no skin in the game.
Hmm.
They care deeply about my success and my well-being,
Hmm.
but I've said this before and not everyone agrees with me, but if you can't contribute to the solution, I don't want to discuss the problem with you.
Yeah, yeah,
It's exhausting.
yeah.
Then you've got the group over here that I support and serve through my profession or I orbit, as you said, who are
Hmm.
like pinnacle.
Hmm.
And they really can't relate to
Yep.
me either. And then there's the other element of being a female,
Hmm.
being of a certain age, being on a soloist journey most of my life.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I fit in to get that support. And so
Hmm.
I make peace with I get little bites of support in different ways from different people.
Yeah.
And then I cry a lot.
Believe it or not, same.
And then I remind myself, my higher self says, like, what an honor.
Hmm.
Which does remind me of one of the many stories I want you to tell, but how the walk-off loss.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that people have yet to complete the book when they say, "Hey, I love your book." That walk off, man, that's so epic. And I'm like, keep reading, dog, because I don't think you have all the info. So the story goes like this. I was a junior in college. I played at the University of San Diego. When I arrived at the University of San Diego, it was a good mid-major Division One NCAA program, like a top 25 team. I think they had won the back-to-back conference titles. But when you go there, you're not like, flying private and like, doing the LSU thing. And a magical cultural phenomenon happened while I was there, which, and I'm not exaggerating, informs me every day. Like I wake up with those 4 years like shining on me right now. Like I make a living basically retelling things I learned as a
Mhm,
freshman
mhm,
in college.
mhm.
Unbelievable experience.
Are you aware of how it's forming you in the moment, or is it a hindsight thing? Because I
Yeah.
only know you today, which is hyper aware,
Yeah.
hypersensitive, and I don't know if you were aware of that at that time.
It's a good question. I think across the 4 years, some awareness crept in, but my life was very singular at that time. I had enough filed in the very back of my mind was when this is done, meaning baseball,
Mhm.
professional baseball, when this is done, I want to be an entrepreneur. I thought I'd be 41 years old. My baseball career ended when I was 24. So that happened quicker. But that was filed in the back of my mind. And here's how I'll answer your question. I remember being a freshman, walking into our first team meeting. So I've been to 0 college classes. I've just moved into this dorm. I'm 170 pounds of just piss and vinegar, trying to like win a job at this next level. I don't know what it's like. And I'm in a room with 30 other players, most of which seem like grown men. My manager, who I love to death, Rich Hill, he's now the head coach at the University of Hawaii, did so many things well, one of which was building suspense. That culture was so strong that I don't to this day know what actually would have happened to someone if they were late to anything. In our
Okay.
heads, I think the assumption was that you're killed on site. I don't know. It was just like rigorous
Yeah.
buy-in to rules
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
attention to detail like that. And so we're all there in the room sitting early for the meeting to start because punctuality matters. But he would come in 3.5 minutes late. So
Literally 3.5?
3.5. I mean, I don't know if he timed it, but about three and a
Oh,
half minutes
because I
late
wouldn't have been shocked if you
to,
were like, "Yep, yep."
well, yeah, I mean, this could be a whole tangent, but like meetings would be at very specific times.
Mhm.
All right. So at the gym, for example, every
2:46.
every coach's prep meeting starts at 7:51 because of him, right? Yeah. You got
Yes,
me? Yeah.
yes, got it.
So
So you would come in late.
imagine the feeling of this rigorous, hard culture environment where no one is late. You're there early. You
Yeah.
sit in a room for a thing that's supposed to start at a specific time, and then you sit in
I can feel it
silence.
in my chest
Yeah, I
right
feel it
now.
right now. I'm not even there. Right? And it's just like this impending thing. It builds the suspense. Then he walks in, and then it's focus on this guy.
Mhm.
And I think most people sat in that room because it was a rules meeting to hear the rules, which is why I was there. But I had two perspectives running at once, which was like, listen to the rules meeting, you're a player here. And then the other perspective was, this guy's whole livelihood is based on whether us idiots can figure out how to win baseball games.
Mhm.
So everything he's saying and making up basically with these rules is searching for best practices about how
Mhm.
to do this impossible thing. And a meeting like this is happening at every other Division One school all around the country. And we're all trying to figure out how to beat each other.
Mhm.
And I was sitting there, I was like, this is how you run a company. Like I'm watching a CEO
Mhm.
set the rules for how to create value, and that stays with me, to this day. That team culture, this getting back to the story, was so incredible that we were ranked fourth in the country as a national seed, which is a privileged path to the College World Series. To say we were overachieving doing this underdog story would be an understatement. So we're at the NCAA regional, and here's the juxtaposition: we're the fourth ranked team in the NCAA Division One level. We're hosting the regional, which is a school record. Our facility isn't nice enough to host the thing. Okay, so we need to borrow another university's facility to host this thing. We're on top of the world, and we find ourselves in an elimination game. And it's kind of that moment that most kids, I for sure, read it in the backyard with a wiffle ball game all the time. Ninth
Mhm.
inning, we're down
Mhm.
by 3. We got 2 runners on, and I'm walking up to this at bat as old as I've ever been.
Mhm.
I've logged as much work as I've ever logged. I've mathematically as prepared for this moment as I've ever been. I've lived my whole life to do this thing well. And when you're playing or doing something at that level, whether it's like sports or military or business, the best in the world shrink the performance down to the smallest interval possible. So I don't know anything about football, but I would imagine that the best NFL players are trying to win each down,
Mhm.
right? Win each play. In baseball, the game is broken down pitch by pitch. So I'm walking up to the plate and I'm executing a routine that is, I wish we had video. I was like, my pre-bat routine was like, everybody hated me. It just took forever. Very
Is it somewhere?
dramatic.
'Cause
I'm sure it's somewhere.
could we
Yeah.
pull in
Yeah.
his pre-routine and throw it in there?
Yeah. So I'm doing these steps, these little superstitious things, and I'm trying to execute the impossible, which is like turn this baseball around and
Mhm.
do something. And I can tell you that my plan was this specific. I'm hunting one pitch in one location to do one thing, and that's fastball away, home run to right center field. ESPN's there, sold out crowd. It's a moment, like it's a very tense moment. And I remember before I stepped into this pitch, this at bat, I smiled. I never smile on a baseball field
Or ever.
or ever. um, and I was grateful, which is not a thing that I align with in general, especially at that age. Like, what?
Mhm.
I was like, I'm so grateful. Like, look at this scenario.
Yeah.
Like, you have to do so many things to stand right here,
Right.
and this whole thing is going to be over in about 90 seconds. I don't know
Yeah.
what the outcome's going to be. Odds are it's not going to be good
Right.
mathematically,
Right.
but like, what a trip is basically what I'm thinking. I'm like, this is nuts. Hitting a baseball is hard. It's a little less hard when you have a specific plan. So I'm looking at this guy out there, and he gets to pick whatever pitch and try to ruin my day, and I'm trying to ruin his day.
Mhm.
And I am so dialed in that I can see things clear as day, right? So the hand comes into the hitter's zone, and I'm like, that's a fastball, and then it's away, up but too far away, at ball one, or step out,
Mhm.
redo the plan. And this process repeats itself until I think the count was 2-1. And this guy throws a pitch. I think it's like 0.3 seconds is like neurologically, it's not
Point
yeah,
3.
it's not technically possible. There's
Yeah.
studies that have been done about this for the brain to see what you're seeing, react, do a physical act.
Yeah.
It shouldn't work.
Yeah.
The only reason why it works is because baseball players who have logged that much time observing a pitcher can
Mhm.
see things before they're actually happening. It's like
Yeah.
a weird.
Isaiah Thomas talks about this basketball, like
Yeah.
athletes operate on milliseconds. Like
Yeah.
we're walking across a crosswalk and you see it counting down 1, 2 seconds. Most people trot, but
Hmm.
athletes know that
Yeah.
that's plenty of
Right.
time
Right.
and they're not
Right.
going to trot to that. Same thing with one of my soccer players. He sees the movement on the pitch
Yeah.
before the movement comes. It's it's
Yeah.
it's flow state.
It
And it's
is.
hard to
Yeah.
explain unless you've been in that
Totally.
flow state. Everything is slow and fast at the same time,
Yeah.
and it's almost like you can pause in it, like, "Wait, what's" it's
Nuts.
wild.
It is wild. And that is exactly what happened. So a thing that in real world time is a fraction of a second, I have my plan. I see the ball in the guy's hand. I recognize the pitch, the location. And between him letting go of the ball and me putting a swing on it, I was then again grateful. I couldn't believe that this dude threw another fastball away because I just swung and missed one. And I was like, "Oh my god, like what a gift." And then I swung, couldn't feel or hear anything, and then the ball leaves the stadium just as I envisioned it in right center. And as soon as I touch first base, like everything comes out of slow motion. I'm like, whoa. And I'm rounding the bases. Everybody's going nuts. And, I touch home plate and there's this like epic picture, this epic moment of me doing that. And I've never executed like a long term dream. I mean, doing that took wanting to do that when I was
Mhm,
5 to
mhm,
get there. It's easily the most incredible thing that I've experienced and done like to this day physically. And that's how I open the books telling the
mhm,
story.
mhm,
It's a classic example of flow.
mhm,
And the reason why I tell it is because I recall what happens after at the end of the book, which is it was the top of the ninth inning, and that tied the game.
mhm,
The batter after me grounded out to the third baseman, and like 10 minutes later, we lost in the bottom of the ninth.
mhm,
And so it's this interesting story because it's like, I trained for that moment for 15 years,
mhm.
and then 10 minutes later, it meant nothing, like not a
It
thing.
meant, like, nothing.
Yeah, it didn't amount to
Right.
anything is one way to look at it. But the beauty of pursuing peak performances, flow states specifically, and like our best selves, I'm making the case that if you do that right, it doesn't matter if you have success ultimately in the end, because there are so many undeniable transferable skills that are built along those roads
Mhm,
that cannot be contrived any other way.
mhm,
That experience was with me riding up the elevator to be here, you
mhm,
know. And so it's an interesting story and I tell it for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is there's a great deal of fear I believe around pursuing these long, difficult, arduous pursuits of our best self. One of the main culprits or reasons why people don't is for fear that it won't work out or that they're going to pick the wrong thing or
mhm,
whatever.
mhm.
So if I can like validate that and then just take that reason away from you,
Right,
then like maybe you'll give it a crack,
right.
you know?
I I'm just constantly failing forward.
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
accidentally in the position that I'm in. I did not aspire to be any of the things I am right now.
Yeah.
One of the core reasons why I'm excited to jump into the leadership program is, and this is a question, and you can call bullshit on me. What would you say to someone who actually doesn't want to be in a leadership position, but the universe keeps putting them
Mm,
in those positions? 'Cause I
that's a
fight
great
this.
question.
I fight this. I would
You
love
should
to be in
you
my
should
lane
do
and do
this.
my
You should have a
thing.
podcast. That was a really good question. um yeah, okay. So here's what I'll say. I used to have a different attitude about this. Usually I'm like spending my time talking people into the hard thing, the leadership
Right.
thing.
I've lived
Today,
the
yeah,
hard
yeah.
thing.
Today I would say don't do it. Don't do it. You don't want to be a leader.
Great.
Don't do it.
Great. Well,
Um,
we're done with the
that's right.
thanks.
Yeah, don't
That's
do
the
it.
last episode of the
Thank you.
podcast.
Wouldn't recommend it. No, eventually you would need to come around to the idea that you're going to take responsibility for
Mhm.
this. And if not, you should absolutely not do it.
Mhm.
Leadership is a thing that I talk about quite a bit. It's a key to my business
Mhm.
and how we structure things. It's a academic topic that's interesting to
Right.
me.
Right.
And I'll start by saying leadership has these positive connotations. It's like green juice and yoga and kettlebells. It's like, yeah, dude, like more of that. But it's quite awkward to have, let's say, 100 out of 100 people being like, yeah, we need leadership,
Right.
more of it. I want that. That's a good thing.
Because there's leadership skills. I think everyone should embody leadership skills.
Yeah.
I guess if I really think about my question, the angst that comes with it, which I want to talk about the video I repost all the time of you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The dissatisfaction video. I am dissatisfied when I go into an organization or I
Mm-hmm.
am a part of a team and no one is taking accountability for
Mm-hmm.
anything. And their default is, well, Mary's got it. She's
Yeah,
the leader or she has those leadership qualities. I made a joke that I want my New Year's resolution to be that I'm no longer reliable.
that's right.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Please, I am not reliable.
Yeah.
Don't depend on me. Because if you are someone that will take care of it, it gets thrown on you, and then no one else around you is doing that. You're so good at creating buy in and creating other leaders. Where if I go into an org, I'll find one or two, and I'm so bogged down with the responsibilities that I
Yeah.
have outside of my actual role that I don't even have time to foster new leadership. Like, I want to share the leadership
Yeah.
because I'm tired.
Well, you said the magic word, shared leadership. That is a key point of view that we have about leadership and how organizations should run. So we'll take a step back and talk about leadership specifically. I think we all would agree with what I just said, that leadership is this positively connotated thing. We want more of it, whatever. But what's awkward is if I asked someone who's like, yeah, more leadership, I'm like, well, what is that? They'd be like, they would give a bad answer, right? I'm not going to pop quiz anybody, but like, if you haven't really sat down and defined what that is, we're going to have a hard time building it, developing it, being it, stepping into it, talking about it, holding someone accountable to it. What is it? Right. And I want to challenge you a little bit on one of the things that you said, which
So
is,
exciting.
yeah, I
Hold the
think
stand summit here,
that's
right
right.
here.
I think that what was your New Year's resolution? Not
To
to
not
be
be
reliable.
reliable.
Yeah, okay, that's good. That's funny. Mine is that we're more disagreeable, that we disagree more.
Yeah,
Okay, so
that's a love
yeah,
language.
we're actually not disagreeing, but I'm going to say a thing, and one is I think that when we think about leadership, we generally tend to orbit around the characteristics of leadership. Like
Okay.
you said, the traits, right?
Right.
You're like, yeah, we should have the traits. I'm like, yeah, and I agree with you 100%. I think a more useful starting point when talking about leadership is moving away from what are the characteristics of leadership
Mhm.
and moving towards something that's actually closer to the work that needs to be done. And this is actually isn't my concept. There's a guy called Ronald Heifetz who I would say is having the highest level conversation about leadership in the world. He's at Harvard, and he's written a lot of works on this. But the way he would say it is that we should tether leadership to the work that needs to be done rather than the elements. Like, is leadership charisma and great communication skills and da 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 da, da? Or is it that we have problems and we need to solve those problems?
Mhm.
And so, in that vein, our definition of leadership is very useful. I don't really care if it's accurate by anyone else's standards,
Right.
and I'll give it to you. To be in leadership is to be responsible for the results,
Mhm.
period, and period. That's
Mhm.
it. Now, with that definition, you can do lots of cool shit,
Mhm.
right? Because it's not about your title, how old you are, your skill level, really anything about you. It's when you see dissatisfaction like you're
Mhm.
experiencing, well, who will be responsible for that?
Mhm.
When you experience dissatisfaction, just because I know you, you take on the responsibility for that, as painful as that might be.
Mhm.
Rarely are you moving through your life being like, I don't like the way my current state or the way that things are in this particular instance. And I'll tell you the 11, 12 dudes whose fault it is. It's like,
Right.
no, I'm going to find a way to bridge this gap. That is to be in leadership.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what you look like, what your communication skills are, whatever. And when you have a definition like that, who then is on the hook for the results?
Mhm.
Everyone can be on the hook,
Mhm.
right? Regardless of what your business card says or whatever, right? You can share leadership with that definition. And so, all of my, this is like spoiler alert, all of my perspectives around building organizations is, can you build the container and constraints such that all people are in leadership?
Mhm.
I do not spend time with people, work with people, definitely don't work with people
Mhm.
or hire people who are giving you the reason for your New Year's resolution. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is like relinquishing agency and responsibility towards the people who are going to handle it.
Mhm.
But I wanted to share this maxim that we use around complaint. If you have a complaint,
You better have a solution in
yeah,
tow.
that was it. You were talking about, I don't like when people have a complaint without a solution. What we say is, I'll hear your complaint and I want to hear what your commitment is.
Mm.
And that holds a good tension. You know,
Mhm.
we want to have good tension of responsibility, I think.
Mhm.
And you and I and anyone else can have lots of problems in an organization or whatever, and we
We
will.
do.
We do, and we will, and we will continue to have that. However, it only really works if we're willing to take responsibility for them. I find that the best places to learn that is doing very difficult things,
Right.
you know?
Which we both sign up for.
Yeah, very difficult
I
things.
sign up to fail,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, and that is a lesson in leadership. That is a lesson in what I think is sort of the meaning of life is like, we are in one particular plight, and we would like to have this other plight be further along, more capable, more evolved, and who will take responsibility for the gap between here and there?
How do you give yourself space in between that, though? Because, again, I know you well enough to know that you had a difficult period of time where you had to
Mhm.
sort of unplug.
Yeah.
I'm making a decision to dissolve one of my entities. Maybe not forever, but for right now, because I'm
Mhm.
realizing that I'm spending all of my time trying to make this thing happen against all odds. And it's some of the odds don't even make sense because if you
Mhm.
have a business, pterodactyls come out of the sky and crazy
Yeah.
ass shit happens.
Yeah.
And I haven't had the opportunity to give myself the space to evolve, to consult, to learn, to do all the things that bring me alive.
Yeah.
And it was a very difficult decision. I was interviewing Mark Sisson, and as he was telling me a story, it was like hit me like, oh, I've gotta make this decision to come up with a way to bounce.
Mhm.
How do you reconcile when you need to remove yourself from the thing to continue to evolve?
Yeah, I mean, specifically speaking to that period of time that you're referencing, I entered a unfamiliar, dark zone of depression that I didn't really have the faculties for, due to, I haven't really thought this through, but I'll say it and we'll fact check it later. Due to what I think is probably the source of all of our troubles,
Mhm.
which is a lack of awareness to what is true. An earlier, less capable version of myself perceived my favorite parts of me, my like willingness to work hard and suffer and do the hard thing and, whatever. The earlier, more regressive version of myself could only see that as positive.
Mhm.
I have a little more perspective now
Mhm.
that all of our strengths cast a shadow,
Mhm.
right? And I didn't have the technology to say that sentence or know what that meant,
Mhm.
right? And
Can
so
you say it again?
yeah, so all of our strengths
Mhm.
cast a shadow, and haven't thought this through, but we could fact check it later. Which is, I think that the taller the strength, probably the bigger the shadow. I think
Mhm.
that's how shadows work. you know, yeah, right? And I will work harder than any motherfucker on the
Right,
planet.
right,
And so there's a big shadow there. I thought it was all sweet, only
right.
good. Here's the work. And I don't want to be corny and use the W word like that, but like here's the work I think that we're all needing to do, which stems from another way to say what I just said, which is that all of us are a bit in over our heads, meaning the troubles we have generally exceed our ability to reconcile them.
Mhm.
And I think that's true for everybody,
Mhm.
you know? So then the work kind of becomes, how do I build my capacity? Some people would call it like conscious capacity to like see other perspectives, have greater awareness, right? The version of me who couldn't see that like there's nothing bad about the fact that I'll just outwork everybody.
Mhm.
Really, I pay the man for that limited belief,
Right.
right? And so here's the question, maybe to give anyone that's listening something useful rather than like I talk in the clouds a
Platitudes.
lot. Yeah, I'm big in the clouds guy. Which is to consider this: we are all subject to something. And what I mean by that is it's like that graduation speech, "What is water?" Can you hear about this? It's a David Foster Wallace thing, I believe, where it's like the old fish swims up to the young fish and says, "How's the water?" And the young fish says, "What's water?"
Mhm.
It's like, what are we unaware of that we're sort of bathing in, for lack of
Mhm.
a better
Mhm.
word? And the money is in what's called the subject object shift. It's when you can make that which you are subject to objective.
Mhm.
Silly example I give all the time. Have you ever stubbed your toe?
Every morning,
Right. Okay. And
basically.
you know what's amazing? Every time I ask that question, people laugh. Okay.
Mhm.
You were not laughing when you stubbed your toe, right? When you stubbed your toe, it's probably like when I stubbed my toe, which is this debilitating,
Yeah.
all consuming, world shifting experience
Yeah.
where you don't have taxes anymore. You don't have companies to run. You're not hungry. You don't know what time it is. You are in the world of the toe is now stubbed,
Yeah.
right? You were subject to that experience. A
Mhm.
silly example, but I think we're all following. Yeah. Today, you have that objective view of it. You're
Mhm.
not in that place anymore. You're looking back on it,
Mhm.
down on it almost, right? From this like third person observer. Oh, that is what that is.
Mhm.
And you have that
Mhm.
objectively. My like colleague, friend, coach at one point, Dr. Miller, her developmental language around this is, do you have it or does it have you?
Mhm.
And so the question is like, what has you right now?
Yeah.
5 years ago, what had me was complete ignorance, and in my blind spot was that like how I was living my life was burning the candle from three ends, and it only has two,
Mhm.
you know. And so right now, I have no idea what I'm subject to, what is out of my peer view.
Let's take a moment.
That's right, yeah. So my job, our job should be to find
Yeah.
what is out there because
Yeah.
that's quite dangerous.
Yeah.
And you have that, I have that, and every person we know has that.
Yeah. I'm realizing my commitment to not quitting is stunting my ability to see what I should be doing or how I can make it better in the future by just quitting now, which is
Mhm.
people are like, "Wait, you're
Yeah,
quitting usually has a negative connotation." But
totally.
I can say I did everything I could fucking possibly do. I left it all on the table, no regrets. Mary Schnuda LLC
Yeah,
has put it all out there and this just it's not. It's not. At least
100%,
not today.
100%.
And if I keep pushing, I'm thwarting the skill set I developed over the last 37 years.
Mhm.
Not just Mary as a performance chef or an entrepreneur, Mary in tech, Mary who was
Yeah,
homeless, Mary who dropped out of high school, all these things that led me to where I am
yeah.
now. And one of the many reasons I love the way you tell stories and the way you share your experience, or as the walk off loss, for example, is I've been knocked down and I'm just like, I'm waiting for the win. I'm waiting
Mhm.
for a win. And I have to remind myself to smile stepping into the
Yeah.
box every freaking day.
What is true for you is also what's true for all the people you work with, who like notable folks. It's true for me. It's true for everybody. Which is, there are people watching you right now who are aspiring to be you.
Right? And I will get those messages
Yeah,
sometimes. I'm like, yo, you don't want none of
that's right.
this.
That's right. They're aspiring to be you. And I don't want to like be pessimistic, but I think some element of life will always feel like that. You know,
Great.
I know not to be like the bearer of bad news, but like you have lots of wins. You're just an expert on all the L's, and it feels more like an L, but like it's not really the case. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna tell you how I feel,
Yeah.
right? I'm not gonna tell you the 360 view higher self me. I'm gonna tell you
Hmm.
like the vulnerable me. Me surviving, being here
Hmm.
statistically, that's a win. I
Yeah.
can see that. There is the moment being part and contributing to a major championship and getting it to do with a home team. Huge win. Those are moments.
Hmm.
I have sacrificed so much of everything else that would make me human
Hmm.
and relatable and part of an us and a we to
Hmm.
have these little moments. And because I'm going to cry, because I'm doing it as an outside consultant, I'm not part of any of those teams. I'm not a part of any of those groups.
Hmm.
I'm contributing to these wins, but from like this side.
Hmm.
So when I have those moments of wins, whether it's my business, it's just me and it's hard.
Hmm.
I was telling one of my friends who's a former baseball player as well. I go, it was so weird to sit sideline and greatest high ever. And then kind of be like, why am I so sad? I want
Hmm.
to like say something to someone. And he was like, well, that's not fair, Mary. You want someone to witness your win? And I'm like, you're a baseball player. Do you guys not
Yeah.
all clear the dugout
Yeah.
together when something
Yeah.
happens?
Yeah.
I have sacrificed all of that because I created an entirely new lane
Hmm.
that didn't exist to create
Hmm.
what I do now. So I can see my moments of wins. I'm still in the journey. I'm still in the shit. And I have to, beyond reasonable doubt, believe it's going to lead towards a win that feels more meaty.
Yeah, and that's
Was that a ramble? Does that
no,
make sense?
that makes perfect sense. I think that, and I don't claim to know the future and how all this works, but I think that the way perception works is you're always going to have a clearer view of the painful parts of your life than those who are watching you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the way I articulate this is we can also reference time. You were born and then turned 1 years old and then two, and then you compounded until this moment. In the same way that you started this podcast being like, well, I know you, Logan, kinda, but also I met you like at this kind of endish point, right? So whenever you met me, when Carl and Omid are telling you maybe nice things about me,
Mm-hmm.
I was waking up on a Tuesday feeling poor and
Mm-hmm.
tired and
Mm-hmm.
unfulfilled and
Mm-hmm.
like a failed fake baseball player who like got into his second choice high school, like
Mm-hmm.
my version of the story is way different
Right.
than like why you invited me on this podcast. You know what I mean? Like my story
I
sucks.
just want to hang out with you,
Yeah,
man.
my story sucks. Or does it?
Or does it?
There's actually like a part of the book where it's like, which version of the story you want to tell?
Right.
I got a really cool one. They're like, it's
Right.
podcast ready. It's fucking tight. You know what I mean? It's so cool. But to do it doesn't feel like that.
No.
I don't know Jay-Z, but like I think that Jay-Z's experience of Jay-Z includes dissatisfaction
Right.
in his own way that is not dissimilar to what you feel about the dissatisfaction around your work.
Yeah.
His fans don't think it's like that.
Right.
That is a bit of an acknowledgement of what I was saying in that video that you like,
Yeah.
which is like dissatisfaction is a part of stepping into leadership or being a creator, based on my definition,
Mm-hmm.
is leadership because you're taking responsibility for this thing that you're creating. And we never arrive. The goalpost keeps moving, the horizon keeps moving, and therefore to do that thing is just a thing filled with some
Mm-hmm.
dissatisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to be meant to be like negative and dismissive, because my call to action with that framework is like less of can we get rid of dissatisfaction and more of can you just change your relationship to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you have a relationship with dissatisfaction? I wake up every single day, I'm so dissatisfied all the time.
Right.
And that's why I do things that other people think are cool. It's not from this like,
Yeah.
oh, like I just dunk on life. No,
Right.
I'm like forever missing the thing.
Right.
The joke is like I've never accomplished one of my goals. Ever. Like, you guys want to do a goal setting? Yeah, I never accomplish those.
Right.
I'm a good like 80-10 guy or
I
80-20
usually say
guy.
like when people give me praise, I'm like, look, I'm just above average underneath legend. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
kind of how I operate, always avoiding this and reaching for this. And when people say to me like, "Oh, you're so positive," I'm like, I'm glad it comes across
You know
that
me?
way. Because
Yeah.
without my negativity, I wouldn't be such an optimist. And I had to get pretty serious with someone on a podcast once who led with, "How can other people be as optimistic as you?" And I was like, pause, time out.
Mm.
I'm deeply depressed.
Look at you
It,
disagreeing on a podcast. I like that.
it is
That's what we
an
need.
active
Yeah.
choice for
Yeah.
me to choose to look for something to look forward to or choose to fix something I
Mhm.
like to be useful, which has become a self-fulfilling nightmare of a
Mhm.
prophecy where now everyone thinks I'm useful and they call me for the emergency, but not for the shenanigans that got them in the emergency. I'm like,
Right.
I'm great at
Yeah.
shenanigans.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's mess some stuff up. Yeah.
So there's a lot of I've been carving my own lane for so long that I've only lived full time in dissatisfaction.
Mhm.
And I have to learn, if it's possible to learn, how to create space to be filled back up.
Yeah.
Because I do the things.
Yeah.
I don't like being around people. I think Bukowski said it's not that I don't like you, it's I feel better when you're not around.
So good, dude. Like Henry Rollins said, "I love you. Why'd you call?"
So I do the solitude thing.
Yeah.
I'm in nature. I have
Mhm.
my habits, but I'm missing something
Mhm.
because or maybe it's normal every 6 weeks. I'm like, what am I doing? Just burn it all fucking
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
My life was easy when I worked at Hallmark.
Yeah.
Made
I
$12 an hour.
yeah. I think that's normal. I don't know the answer because I too this is my thing.
Yeah. Shit.
The fastest way to like, yeah, sorry. That was my job. It's like the fastest way to make me cry is ask me what I do for fun. And I'm just like, I don't know, and then I like get 3 hours to do that. And I'm like, go gadget,
Yeah.
joy. What do I, fuck, I'm halfway. It's not, all right, let's stop. It's like, I don't necessarily know how to do that. That's the edge. Some people's edge is like how to figure out how to work hard.
Yeah, no, I'm
You're
trying to
good.
do the
Yeah,
the
you're,
in
you're
the
all set on that.
opposite.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to hear you say that because you bring so much joy to people.
Thank you for saying
You
that.
bring
Yeah.
the thing that you're trying to figure out what to do with those 3 hours of
Yeah.
time to bring back in. I don't know, I feel joy when I go back to the Bay, I
Mhm.
think, because it reminds me of a different time,
Yeah.
nostalgic. I mean, the Giants won the World Series 3 times over the
Yeah.
course of a period of time. I was rich because I was in tech and didn't have responsibilities.
So good.
But I had more time to play essentially. And it's hard to reconcile when you love what I love fixing things. I love
Mhm.
building things. I love showing up for others. I love doing that, but I'm also so fucking sad.
Yeah. Well, I'm not obviously qualified or here to coach you, but it's like it's interesting when you were saying about being like adjacent to the team or the organization, and like I'm sure that comes with all kinds of complex emotions, and as you were saying that, I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense." And part of me, like the rude part of me wanted to be like, "Yeah, but like you wouldn't want to work for like an organization that's
To
not,
Yeah, no, to be
you
honest,
know, I don't think."
right, right, right. So here's the thing. It's not that I mean, I don't wanna when it comes to sports organizations, I don't. I
Yeah.
do not because then I can't do what I wanna do
Yeah.
effectively. And I'm dealing with egos that I can't tell, like, "Get out of my
Mhm,
I don't wanna
mhm.
talk to you."
Yeah.
And when I worked in tech, like, I was sent to HR all the time for
Mhm.
doing a good job.
Yeah.
That's what's
Yeah.
ironic. Like,
Yeah.
be an overachiever, create new
Yeah.
revenue. I don't like that. No, I don't wanna be part of an organization, but I wanna be in the trenches with you
Yeah.
when we're up and when we're down,
Mhm.
that camaraderie.
Yeah.
And when you're a solopreneur, you don't even have that when you're building the thing. You've
Mhm.
built something so special and so beautiful. That's something that on one hand I aspire to build with my
Mhm.
performance agency stuff because it has its like cute, not cute, very sexy new branding.
Mhm.
But I'm also so tired. I'm like, do I want to sign up for a new thing?
Yeah.
Solo is kind of easy, but I've always wanted to be a part of something bigger
Yeah.
and to be able to, like I said, suffer with you and win with
Yeah.
you. So no, I don't want to be
And you could
a
wanna be
unicorn.
that. I'm just saying, like, as you were saying that, it's like, I was just sort of, like, coming alongside you being
Yeah.
like, that sucks," and, like, totally, I can see how that part of it can be confusing. Some of these are, like, the trade-offs of being this, like, autonomous high agency person like you are. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
just wouldn't be held inside the box of some sports team or some whatever, And so
That's what I
you're
needed
gonna
to
have to
hear.
like be in the front row and like not wear the polo shirt. And actually, it's fine.
There's a whole other thing where I like dress down when I go to work at organizations. I dress way down, like,
Yeah.
and that's something I'm trying to undo. Like, why do I shrink?
Oh,
There's
you think it's a shrink thing? I thought it was a flex thing. That's a cool flex. You can
Oh
be like,
no, I
"What do you
shrink.
guys dress up, losers?"
No, I shrink to be like don't be
Yeah,
seen,
low pro. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, which I don't mind. Like I often when I'm working with different clients, I'll be lugging around hundreds of pounds of equipment and someone will assume I'm a runner and
Mm,
assistant and I don't correct them. I'm like, yeah, no
yeah,
worries.
totally.
And then one of like the starting players would be like, "What are you doing
Yeah,
there?" I'm like, "It's cool. I got
it's
it.
fine.
Someone needs to clean up the mess. It's no big deal."
Yeah.
But it's look, I don't want to take away from I know, okay, look, I am a female non-athlete, high school dropout, didn't go to college, somehow created a lane in performance sports and got to reach the fucking pinnacle
It's crazy.
with not just any team, but like generational players. The
So,
stories
yeah,
are gonna live with me forever.
yeah.
I don't want to be ungrateful for that.
Mhm.
That I'm gonna end that there. I'm not even gonna give it a butt because I'll
Like,
be
I
an
just wanted, like, a
asshole.
little champagne, like, to spray. I wanted to wear, like, the goggles. Yeah, I hear that.
So you were saying how when I met you, you were
Mhm.
in that space, and then I think it was a few more years before you did the dip. Where we were all
Yeah,
concerned, right? Like,
yeah,
where
yeah,
are you?
yeah.
Not really responding to anyone. And then now,
Yeah. You're, like, not really holding on to that, but, like, it was 5 days till you text me back. Yeah.
I wish it was
Yeah.
5 days.
Fuck, who knows? I blacked out.
And then seeing you now laughing more than ever, smiling
Yeah.
more than ever. I hope it's legit.
Yeah, it's
Great.
legit. I'm not that
And
good of an actor.
what are the practices you're implementing now to keep yourself grounded?
Yeah, I mean, definitely an amateur in this space, but I, was taught the lesson. Message receives, I can't live the way that I used to live. A couple things. I think all roads lead to discernment in life, right? Like today's price is different than yesterday's price, kind of thing. Like what you
Mhm.
would do for work today is different than what you'll do for work 10 years from now, and who you'll spend your time with will be different and all of that. And so I'm trying to get ahead of this discernment. I think a lot of the classic burnout type things occur when life teaches you to be discerning before you choose to be discerning. There's much more agency in being ahead of that, right?
Mhm.
Like, are you going to, here's something I say to coaches and trainers a lot, right? It's like classic scenario. You're new at this and you're afraid to charge what you're worth, right?
Mhm.
To which I will say to them, okay, well, will you increase your prices because you resent all of your clients and you're exhausted and burnt out and hate everyone? Or will you make that choice before then? Because we know that 5 years from now, the price will be different, right? And so that's a money thing. But for me, it's a time thing, who I spend my time with, what are
Mhm.
the types of projects I say yes to or no to, et cetera. And so I'm just trying to curate the things that, bring me some sense of fulfillment and joy. I know myself better than I did then.
Mhm.
I'm off the charts, shy, quiet, introverted person. I just, play this other role kind of thing. And so the things that nurture that, I have to defend in the way that I would defend performance and putting out and like doing work.
Mhm.
And so you can find me drinking coffee by myself, reading books a lot more than you used to. And I have like my places I go. Like I love Big Sur, and
Mhm.
I just need time away. I think the best way to get someone like me on board with these things is to use logic rather than like, you need to take care of yourself. It's like that never works.
Mhm.
What works is, oh, I just became a half as good at this job because I let myself get to this place. That doesn't work, because people like me will justify, extending yourself, burning the candle from both ends or whatever. And it just works till it doesn't. So now that I see that it doesn't work,
Right.
I'm all in. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, that doesn't work at all.
The
You know?
fire's behind
Yeah,
you.
like, what? But there's more levels to go. I'm trying to be social and have like friends. Can we do that? How do you do that? Friend, hang out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know
The
what I mean? Remember
cookouts?
those days?
Right, right. I miss those
Yeah.
days. I'm gonna cry again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I'm trying to, participate in the
You
parts of
enjoy
that.
those things, I
Yeah.
assume. As an
Yeah.
introvert, you still do also enjoy being social.
It has to be highly curated. I don't say that from like a pretentious place, but it's like I just want to have meaningful connections with people.
Yeah. One of my favorite hangs was Old Lightning with Drew in the back.
Yeah, like, and if you rewind the tape on that, we probably sat down and within 30 seconds the conversation went somewhere that didn't include the bullshit. You
Do
know
you
what I
wanna
mean?
know where it started? Because I
I don't. Do
distinctly
you remember?
remember it,
No, I
yes.
don't remember.
So we sit down, and Old Lightning is a speakeasy behind Scopa. You gotta find the Frenchman, and
Yeah.
they confiscate your phone, and you
Yeah.
get a little card. But we're in there, it's a Scotch tasting room, and Drew turns to you and goes, "Well, how's Mary, fitting into the Deuce community?"
How do I answer that? Oh, God.
And again, I don't realize how much you do pay attention to things
Oh, I
because
notice everything.
yeah, so you go, "Well, Mary yelled at so and so," which we all appreciated
That's right.
because no one else can,
Yeah.
but she did.
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Man, I always get put on front street
Regulator.
like that."
Regulator. Respect. Yeah.
That's how
Respect.
it started. And yeah, it wasn't about bullshit. It was
Yeah.
fun. It was challenging. We talked about Drew was making changes in his life and his
Mhm.
career at the time too.
Mhm.
It's always a good time. It's always a good mix with that crew.
Yeah.
Anytime somebody tells me I'm looking to train somewhere or somebody moves to LA, I essentially pay
Oh,
forward what Carl and
thanks.
Omi did. I'm like, you got to go to
Yeah.
Deuce. Like,
Thank you for doing that. Yeah. Those certain people that I really resonate with can really fill my cup. And it's like, I think just finding those people. I was just in New York. I was teaching the Hold the Standard Summit in
mhm.
Brooklyn. And one of my best friends is this very interesting guy, Vava. He's a Brazilian photographer. And he's like, I'm sitting under the Hare Krishna tree in Thompson Square Park. And I'm like, what's Thompson Square Park? Like, what is these directions? He's like, come find me. So I haven't seen him in probably a year and a half. I go see him. And he's like, let's walk to this breakfast place. And we sit down. I'm not embellishing for the podcast. 30 seconds into this conversation, he's like, hey, have we talked about the pink dolphins in the Amazon? And I was like, pink, like one pink dolphin, or is that like lots of pink dolphins? He's like, no, there's lots of them, but they're only in one area. And like this tribe there, they grow up with them. There's all this mythology. He's like, have we
This
not
is
talked
so
about this?
dope.
And I'm like, Vava, we haven't got our water yet, dude. And you're like barreling down my throat with pink dolphin propaganda. Like, and this is why I love you, dude. And like this guy is just, educating me on the finer details of
Yeah.
these mythological creatures.
You find that outside of what is stereotypically found in the geographical area that we're in.
Yeah.
And I've been here 12 years now, and it's gotten to me because I've been either working or like going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And I miss conversations about pink
Yeah.
dolphins.
Totally. It's like people doing interesting things.
Yeah. Yeah. I do
Yeah.
really miss that. We've mentioned Hold the Standard Summit. Will you, for anyone listening, explain what it is? Because
Yeah.
I know there's people in my listenership, viewership. What are they called?
That's a
What
word.
do you guys
I'll
call?
take it. Yeah.
Who would
Blink
benefit
twice
from
if
that?
Yeah. Totally. So the Hold the Standard Summit is a 2-day course that I teach on basically two main topics. The first is adaptive leadership. I can explain that elevator pitch in a second. And the structure of what are called deliberately developmental organizations. And so this thing started on accident. Basically, I was on a podcast that was popular in the strength and conditioning space, and a lot of people reached out. I kind of forget what I was talking about, but I think they were impacted by the business and like how it's structured, and it felt different. I think is all that I really alluded to, and that somehow came across. And my friend Kitcho from Spain reached out. He owns some.
Baba and Kichu.
Yeah, we
I
got
love this.
names. We got good names. This guy reached out. He wasn't. I didn't know him, and he said, "Hey, how do I learn to do what you guys do?" And I was like, "I don't know. You know,
I
come
get
visit.
I get
I
that
have no
question
idea."
all the
You know,
time.
he's like, "Well, that's not a good answer." You know,
Mm,
and he goes, "What if I?" Basically, over a series of calls, he coerced me into putting together a course, which started as this like very straightforward, quite frankly, not very good seminar for gym owners. You know, we did this thing in Spain.
how many days was it initially?
Oh, it was like 4 or 5 days. It was like this all include it was a whole different it was hilarious looking back. But this has evolved because that wasn't really as interesting to me as what it is now, which is like, well, could I articulate the principles of this in a way that is more universal? So I set a goal that I would change the format, I would change the content, and if I could get more than half the room be non-fitness people,
Mhm,
non-gym owners, non-whatever, people from that world, then I've sort of accomplished what I'm trying to accomplish here. And that's really what it's become. Is yeah, there are still gym owners that come in, but it's entrepreneurs of all kinds from all different industries, and it's really become what it ought to be.
mhm,
And so, adaptive leadership, what is that? Well, I gave you our definition of leadership, but this idea of adaptive leadership recognizes that there are at least two different kinds of problems or challenges in the world that we have, our organizations have. And the first of which is the most familiar, which are technical challenges. You need a CRM, you know, to like
mhm,
track things. You got to send an email to 10,000 people. Like, there's a technical solution for that. The internet goes down. You may not know how to fix it, but there's an expert out there that could
mhm,
fix it. A technical challenge is a known challenge with a known solution. Experts have these answers. You know, you break your arm, a doctor can fix it. Technical challenge. These are important, but it doesn't account for this other type of challenge, which is this adaptive challenge, which is very difficult to pin down. Sometimes the challenge itself is not clear, but the main characteristic is the solution is unknown
mhm,
and really unknowable. It's only solved when the person or thing with the challenge adapts, if the name
mhm,
comes from, or evolves to a place that they can solve the problem.
mhm,
And it requires new learning. You can't Google these answers.
mhm,
And I think it's a beautiful place to start. That's how the seminar starts, because most people come into my life because they want me to tell them what to do.
mhm.
And that's not how this shit works, you know? So if you can start by bifurcating at least into those two buckets and acknowledge that adaptive challenges really are the ones that are giving us the most trouble,
Mhm,
and they really give us trouble when we treat them like technical challenges.
mhm,
You think you're a book away or a seminar away, ironically, from solving your problems. It's just probably not the case. I start awkwardly, ironically, with that perspective and say, like, you being here is not gonna solve your shit.
mhm,
And so let's talk about the mechanics of how we change and evolve. And then we
mhm,
talk about how individuals and from a collective perspective, organizations can adapt and become something that it's not.
mhm,
And when you have those mechanics, you can kind of manipulate your own development, which is
mhm,
cool. The shortest story on that is it's all around disconfirming information,
mhm,
which is why I think we should be disagreeable on podcasts. You know
mhm.
what I mean? It's like we don't learn from confirming information.
There's a couple of things I wanna say, I'm gonna go back to the summit, but people talk about love languages. I
Mm-hmm.
wanna know fighting languages,
Oh yeah,
right?
oh, that's
People
right.
don't really know
Yeah,
how to have discourse and
yeah.
disagree, and I can tell what type of client, what type of friend, and what type of lover
Mm-hmm.
based on how we
Yeah,
disagree, how
yeah,
we hold space,
yeah,
and nothing gets me more excited than, like, "I disagree, let's talk about it." I'm like,
yeah.
"Hell yes,
Totally,
let's get into it."
totally.
So, but going back to the summit. So the summit was created out of necessity because somebody asked for it,
Mhm.
and somebody asked for it based on the body of work of the
Yeah.
gym, and the gym was created because of dissatisfaction with what was out there in the industry.
Yeah, that's at the surface, yes. Below the surface is I didn't really care what it was. I wanted to be an entrepreneur for
Mhm.
the sake of what that is.
Mhm.
It rose to the top of my list of ideas to express entrepreneurship, partially fueled by dissatisfaction.
Mhm.
It was weird coming out of a major American sport
Mhm.
and just seeing that there's multi-billion-dollar industry, the fitness industry is not having the same conversation. And they're like, this is so weird,
Right.
And so I felt like I could communicate that.
I was painting the picture of how, like, the next step isn't usually seen.
Yeah,
It's based off of the last step,
yeah,
and the more stable or aware the last step is, the more clear that next step's gonna be. It's like when a
yeah.
baby's learning how to walk type of thing,
Mhm.
because, again, I this is not what I shot to become.
Right.
I say often, I'm exactly the kind of woman I wanted to be when I grew up.
That's good. I like that,
I
yeah.
don't quite know what I wanna
Yeah,
be
that's right,
yet.
yeah.
Even this morning, I was getting my blowout.
Yeah.
My hairstylist was saying, "I'm really trying to figure out what I wanna do. You're so lucky you're living out your dream," and she's going on, and I'm just thinking like,
You're like,
"Well," and
"Am
I
I?"
go,
Yeah.
"I'm not living out my dream." And
Yeah.
she's like, "What?" I go, "If it makes you feel any better, this is not my dream. This
Mhm.
is me following the signs and taking the next step. Like, I'm still figuring out what my dream is." And she's like, "Oh, okay." I'm like, "Yeah, let me give you permission to, like, be okay being not sure, but find a space to
Totally.
be in."
That goes back to the thing we talked about, which is like when you observe another person, you leave out all of those parts.
Right.
She's like, "Oh, this is a person who's got to figure it out. They're killing it. They're winning. I'm losing, whatever." And you're like, "You know what I mean?" And like,
Yeah,
so it is permission.
yeah.
It is permission.
What are you currently dissatisfied about that we're gonna pursue?
Oh man,
We are gonna pursue.
yeah. What are we? Um, I mean, a lot of things. I think as it pertains to my work, we started a nonprofit over the last couple of years. We use our developmental frameworks and processes and shared leadership
Mhm,
to empower folks who are system, substance, and or housing impacted.
mhm.
Mostly people who are currently informally incarcerated.
It's a beautiful program.
Yeah, thank you. I think that I really believe that the meaning of life is this playing in the idea of traversing the gap between where we are and
Mhm,
where we could be.
mhm,
Like that teaches you all the things. The most rich life experiences happen in that pursuit. If you're
mhm,
doing that, you are engaging in life.
mhm.
And I think everybody should be doing that. That's my projection into the world. It just so happens if you've done 15 or 20 years in prison, the path to you finding your best self-actualized self is not really paved in any meaningful way.
Right,
It's hard enough already. It's
right,
impossible
right,
for those folks. So we're sort of removing that issue in our own way.
right.
That is a source of dissatisfaction that I didn't even know was going to come my way. And
Yeah, it's great. Coach
so
Joseph is
yeah,
great, has helped me
yeah.
with some stuff in my life. Like
Oh, cool.
what is
Yeah.
being built there
Yeah.
is really incredible and touching. And like I told you, I any way I can support, especially with anyone who suffered with
Yeah.
addiction, with nutrition.
Yeah.
It's what you've accomplished and what the framework that you're laying down to accomplish is so understated. And I don't know that you'll ever
Hmm.
actually give yourself the pat on the shoulder, but when you think about the body of work is you have your core gym, you have your gym that's dedicated to young athletes, you have another community that's dedicated to helping rehabilitate folks.
Yeah.
You really are leaving spaces better than you found them.
Thank you. The dissatisfaction part is kind of built in everything, that we're doing. And so, I know that part of my work is, how do I get to a place where I can be me better,
Mhm.
and I haven't done that very well, because of part of the things that we spoke about earlier and just living in a way that isn't sustainable is an overused word, but in a way that allows me to express my greatest value in the world. A couple years ago started this digital creative
Mhm.
agency standard, which has really taken off and provides me a lot of joy in creative problem solving. I get to do strategy
Yeah.
for other folks.
Completely different industries too,
Yeah,
which is
completely.
wild.
Yeah, it's very wild. In any given day, Yesterday I have 5 meetings and it's a comedy movie, like
Mhm.
going from one to the other, talking about like smart buildings and the technology therein to intricate points of performance of the clean and jerk and how to coach a coach to coach that to other coaches. And then into another meeting about like commercial real estate. And I'm
Right.
just like, what the fuck is this?
But I
Um
don't think you'd be
yeah.
satisfied if it was just one lane. I'll never be satisfied with just one
Yeah.
lane. And I think that's something we have in common. I think I heard you say this, and maybe your answer will be different. You're doing a lot.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot.
Are you overcommitted?
Probably.
And what
Yeah.
advice would you give to someone else?
Yeah, it's a good call. I think about this a lot because on one hand, I get on airplanes and I go tell people how to like build leadership in other people and not do a lot of things that I'm doing.
Do as I say,
Yeah.
not as I
Yeah,
do.
I mean, but as I like if I were to defend myself,
Mhm.
there's been an interesting series of events that I feel like I've had to tend to,
Mhm.
that I feel proud of how I've tended to them. Being in the gym business and being in gyms being illegal globally because of a pandemic was an interesting time.
Yeah.
And I feel like we, for lack of a better phrase, fucking crushed that.
Fucking crushed it. Drop
You
shipping,
Yeah, it was
like, that was
wild.
insane.
Yeah, insane. But also, that was like wartime general vibes.
Right.
You know what I mean? And had some like, personnel, challenges to solve for wartime general vibes. I'm just
Yeah.
kind of like ready to get into like some peacetime.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's a little like,
You and me
let's
both.
run the drill, you know? Yeah, like we drew it up.
Right.
And I'm like at the 1 yard line of the current hardest thing I've ever done.
Mhm.
No exaggeration. I don't know how it will shake out, but I do feel proud as to how I showed up for
Mm.
this. So
Mhm. Mhm.
life has presented a series of like challenges that I feel like I've risen to.
Mhm.
And yeah, if I'm defending myself, I would say like, but that's how it had to be.
Uh-huh.
Not trying to be like this all the time or
Right.
whatever,
I'm
And
just gonna
so
borrow your defense.
yeah,
I selfishly asked it,
yeah,
so when someone tells me I'm
yeah,
overcommitted, I'll be like, "Well."
yeah. Wartime. Wartime. Yeah, you see how it is out there? Take a look. And there's also some dissonance in there. Like, there's like the details of the execution of that
Yeah.
definitely could be better.
Yeah.
And I see some of that. And so I do like coming to the end of the year because it's a time to reflect a bit. And so there are some X's and O's around how that will improve immediately.
Mhm.
However, when it's life or death, you know what I mean? Like I'm going to war, so that's how that's been.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
I can't remember if it's R.M. Drake or the Stone Poet, but he says, "I'm not a fighter, it's not my nature, but
Mm.
when backed into a corner, survival is."
Yeah, that's real.
That
Yeah, that's real.
resonates.
I'm a pacifist, and I'll also kill some motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? Like straight up.
Makes me think of Tate.
Yeah, respect.
Tate
Yeah,
is a gentle
totally.
giant, but if I'm going to war,
Yeah,
I want
yeah,
that person to my
a
right for
hundred
sure.
percent, thousand. Yeah. The main thing that I think I end up gravitating towards are the conditions for growth.
Mhm.
Most everyone I've ever met is interested in being better, further along, more developed, more capable, whatever. And I think that there's this irony where that's what we want,
Mhm.
but we are generally participating in a world that will never give us that to the degree that we want
Mhm.
because of some tendencies. A lot of it goes back to the mechanics of growth. And we grow because our frame or perception is challenged, which is why I keep coming back to this disagreeable idea. So if we can just remove some emotion about this and we can acknowledge that growth would come from a disconfirming experience or disconfirming information, then you will only grow when that type of experience or information enters your life. So most
Mhm.
people only grow when life grows them.
Mhm.
Tragedy,
Mhm.
a health scare,
Mhm.
financial ruin, your house burns down, these horrible things,
Mhm.
cancer, great time to grow.
Check, check, check,
You,
check.
you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, and I don't mean to like make light of that because those things will grow you and they're coming our way. They really
Mhm.
are. But I like this idea of agency,
Mhm.
you know, I'm so committed to a non-deterministic life that I generally don't keep a calendar very well. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. It manifests in all kinds of poor ways. But if you want the highest agency version of life and growth, then you're going to need to grow on purpose in
Mhm.
between these tragic events. And so the whole game then is, can you set the container such that you would be on purpose receiving these feedback experiences
Mhm.
that are generally not going to feel that great. They're going to
Right.
be negative. That's how I've built my companies. That's like our secret sauce, right? Is if we can make negative feedback not just okay, but sexy around here.
Mhm.
If we can all acknowledge that, like, the fuel that we're shoveling into the furnace that makes this thing go
Mhm.
is disconfirming information,
Mhm.
then we have a chance to get great
Right.
quicker, you
Right.
know? And so, in order to participate in that space, you need two things like in abundance. One is trust, and the other is willingness.
Right.
And so, if you can look around your life and curate more of those things, right? Like, there is an incredible amount of wisdom about your blind spots
Mhm.
in the world around you. And you just got to like set people up to give you that,
Right.
you
It's
know?
really difficult to get critical feedback.
It is, yeah.
I think people don't feel comfortable giving it. I can't see a lot of areas people are usually comfortable receiving it outside of the sports facilities that I'm in.
Mhm.
But like even with this podcast, I'll even ask Brad sometimes, like, what can I do better? And I get a lot of like, you're doing great. And you know me well enough to be
Mhm.
like, you did this at one of the what did you call that thing that we did at Rooster?
Oh, that was like the book thing, right?
Yeah,
That
where we
was
did each week we visited a
yeah, I
different
don't know what I call it. It was like a book club, but yeah, each week we did one of the concepts of
right.
the model.
I
Yeah.
you need to bring that back, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But I was in the hot seat one day.
Yeah,
Again, I
yeah.
don't realize you pay attention to anything I do. So I'm sitting in the seat and you're like, I know Mary, and I
Mhm.
know she's not gonna want me to tell her what she did right. She
Mm.
wants me to tell her
Mhm.
all the ways she can improve.
100%.
And I things like that make me feel so seen. So thank
Oh,
you.
I see you. Yeah.
Because it is really difficult to get the person in front of you to feel safe enough to give you the critical feedback. Even when I'm
Mhm.
saying, like, I wanna know what I did wrong. I wanna know how I upset you. Like, remove even the context of building something or entrepreneurship, just
Mhm.
in relationships or friendships or with your family. How can I show up better? Help
Mhm.
me understand. And the initial reaction is like, "What? No." Or, "Of you're fine, you're
Yeah.
great." And so how do you foster that willingness and that
Yeah.
safety?
And that's unfortunately just not the common way of being, you know? And so I like to look to extremes to learn these lessons. And it's also in those extremes that you learn how to do this, which is what your question was. So when it comes
Go light everyone's house on
that's
fire.
right. When it comes to groups, I observe that the best groups and team dynamics in the world have some sort of rite of passage, which either filters for or develops those two qualities. So, you know, let's use the sports team. Sometimes it's not made obvious. As a player, you would forget. Like, I could tell you right now in the locker room, I wasn't looking around the locker room being like, oh, all these people were drafted. They're vetted, therefore I trust them or whatever. It's less explicit. It's just a
Mhm,
feeling in the room kind
mhm,
of thing. And so people sometimes they're like, there's no rite of passage like you're saying in this example or that example. So then what I say is, well, if you just pick someone off the street and you invited them in and gave them a jersey, what happens now? They're like, fuck that dude. Like who's that? No,
mhm,
no, no. We have a thing going on
mhm,
here. I don't trust you. You
mhm,
haven't done the things that we've done to be
mhm,
in this room,
mhm,
and it changes the dynamics, right? Like the movie Office Space,
mhm.
we all seen this movie Office Space, is like a parody on low performance
Mhm,
communication. Like Milton was fired 4 years ago, and no one's reminding him that he doesn't work here anymore because of how passive aggressive and avoidant the communication is,
mhm,
right? And this is like some version of what regular life looks like for most people.
mhm,
A lot of the locker rooms that you've been around, you know that the communication is different.
mhm,
If I need to tell you that you need to make an adjustment on the field or the court or whatever, it doesn't sound the way that it sounds in Office Space.
Right.
Hey, do you have a minute? I well, first of all, you're doing great. Second of all, like, so that play back there, you missed the thing and you got to do the other thing, and that's really important going forward. And but anyway, I just keep it up or whatever. Like, this is it takes too long. It's not genuine. It's
Painful.
ineffective, painful, or whatever, right? And so, what can we learn from that? It's
Mhm.
like if the highest goal is to get better and to
Mhm.
get better now,
Mhm.
then you need to create an environment that would exchange the best information to get better.
Right.
And if you don't curate that environment, it's not happening. So I like to look at our organization as like we have very structured and specific ways that feedback is going to happen.
Mhm.
That's actually not my goal. The gold standard, like the aspirational thing, is that our water cooler talk is
Mhm.
like, hey, Mary, like, you got anything for me? Like, you
Right.
saw that performance back there. Like, what do you got? And I'm actually like inviting you into give feedback,
Right.
and you're going to give it to me, and it's going to be real and not
Right.
bullshit. And I'm going to be thankful for that,
Right.
which is going to make it easier for you to give it the next time or whatever. And that's like how we roll.
Right. But is step 1 the structure then to create that feeling of safety, then it could transcend to water
Yeah. So,
cooler talk?
so, so step one specifically for us is this rite of passage. People and organizations, you can do this in your relationships or your businesses however you want, but the rite of passage specifically has to solve for those two qualities, and there's a lot of different creative ways that people do it. The classic examples are that are extreme are like selection for special forces groups. It's like, what are those? It's like long, hard, physically arduous,
Mhm.
mentally arduous. Things can cost time, money, effort, whatever. But on the back end, you have these two qualities where like I know that you want to be here more than you want to be anywhere else in the world. You want to win this thing or do
Mhm.
whatever our mission is
Mhm.
more than you want to feel good.
Mhm.
You want to do that more than you want to be right. You want to do that more than you want anything, right? And because we have that, we can exchange this information.
Mhm.
But if you don't have that trust, you're just not going to get it, which is why asking for feedback is hard from people that you don't have that level of rapport with.
Mhm.
So framework we use is weighing feedback based on believability. There are a lot of people that you could ask for feedback about this
Mhm.
podcast
Mhm.
that, quite frankly, you shouldn't listen
Right. Oh, 100%.
to. You know what I'm
100%.
saying? There are other people in your life that you should listen to, and you
Right.
know who I'm talking about.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that is feedback based on the believability of that information.
Right.
The best information to make change and to perform well on is the truth,
Right.
right? And so,
Which is something you and I both seek, lean
yeah,
into, will do anything for
yeah,
finding truth.
we need to be discerning, and I think that's like I'm giving you kind of like the Hold the Standard Summit version of this thing, but I think the macro human version is a thing that I've started to say more, which is I think we all want to live in a world of vulnerability
Mhm.
where people are being themselves, trying their best, giving their best vulnerable effort.
Mhm.
If you want to live in a world like that, we have to support best efforts completely divorced from the results.
Right.
I'm optimistic about that because in my life I've seen this several times where people are because, like you said earlier, we are a mirror to each other.
Mhm.
People are often at first intimidated by people that are going for it. When I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, all my teachers growing up were like, "Yeah, but what's your backup plan?"
Mhm.
And I'm like, "I don't know. Like, what's gonna let this conversation be over? I'll be an architect." Fine. Oh, okay, good. Whatever. I'm like, can I go back to doing what the fuck I'm gonna do? Okay. And then when I wanted to I'll say this: when I became one, those types of people tell you something different. They're like, never make them rip that jersey off your back, never quit,
Mhm.
because you're living their thing that they won't do for themselves.
Mhm.
When I wanted to open the gym, all of the feedback I got was like, dude, you know how many people you gotta sign up at $150 a month to make this? Da, 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 da. The conversation doesn't sound like that now. It's
Mhm.
like, oh my God, like just don't ever quit. You're so important, the work you're doing,
Mhm.
right? Kind of thing. We need to recognize when people are giving a best effort and rally behind that.
Mhm.
when the gym started, it started in very humble beginnings in the park.
Mhm.
And you could look at the chatter go from like, oh, that's you did a little park thing. Oh, nice, you did a little park thing. Seen people doing a little park thing. And then it's like a year in, you guys still doing the park thing?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like going really well. A lot of people out there. Oh, the park thing looks fun. That's kind of cool. It's a cool park thing. And then dude, did you fucking hear that they got a place in like what? And they're doing it. Like
Mhm.
and people rallied behind this witnessing of
Mhm.
something that was so hard and vulnerable, and like we want that. Humans, we want to be around that. We want to do that.
Mhm.
And so when you see it, you have to support it because it's so hard,
Mhm.
you know? And I don't know, that's just like my thing, I think, for us all is like if you see someone making music that's trying really hard,
Mhm.
you got to support that.
Mhm. I
Mm,
love being a
you
cheerleader.
know?
I will promote, pump, intro because I know how hard it is to do anything
Yeah,
because I've done it. It's hard and I don't say I've done it successfully. I'm
doing
wait,
it.
I'm doing it.
Yeah,
And so best effort, that's all I can ask. And I
yeah,
only want to be around people that are giving best effort. Even if you don't succeed,
totally.
best effort wins. That's who I
100%.
want to hire, who I want to hang out with, etc.
Yeah, I think that's the most fulfilling version of life. Like when we're doing our best, you
You
know.
are doing your best.
For sure I am.
I remember you answered a question about when do you know if you've made it? Do you remember your response?
No, what'd I say?
You said, "Either I already have or I never will."
Oh, wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
you're
run
a
that back.
deep ass
That's my answer.
motherfucker.
That was
I
bars.
mean, I can cut it out, ask
Yeah.
you the question, then you can
Nah,
you can
that's
give the
me right there.
delivery.
Yeah. Damn, that's bars. That's good. Vava would say, I asked him one time about this whole thing around perfection and being creative or whatever, and he's an artist, right? So, and I'm sure he's paraphrasing someone else, but he said, they say the only perfect art is the project you're working on. So when you hit print and you put it in a frame and you're done working on it, that's when it's imperfect because you can
Mhm.
notice all of the,
Right.
oh, yeah, I don't like that part or whatever. And I
Yeah.
think I got to that because I'm not a real artist, but I'm a pretend artist. And I was like, dude, I love like painting and drawing and stuff. And he's like, I go, what's this all about? I would love the thing that I'm making or whatever. And I'll always like ruin it in the end. He's like, well, we didn't really ruin it in the end, but he's like, you just notice that it's imperfect because you're done working on it.
Mm.
And I was like, what you just said is about as deep of a statement as I've ever heard,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
took up painting a year and a half ago because I was going through some stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "I gotta do something else," and I would drink scotch and
Yeah.
listen to the same song and just, like, paint,
Sounds good.
and when I wasn't thinking, these pieces the first piece I did is on my wall because
Hmm.
everyone, even Selma was like,
Yeah.
"Yo," and
Yeah.
I'm like, "I
Tight.
just wasn't thinking,"
Right.
and then I started to be more deliberate about it,
Hmm.
and the pieces went to shit because I was
Yeah.
being more critical.
Totally.
And so I had to take a step away and be like, just be in the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, and it's like where it is exactly where it is, and
Right.
we're not done yet. We're still going. So like, what?
What's us?
That's us.
Shit.
That was a metaphor, Mary. That's
Made my day.
right.
Maybe even my month. Might
That's
put a
right.
cap on my ear.
Nice.
Where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram at functional coach, all
Mhm.
one word. All of the education is at deucegym.com/university. The agency is at agency-standard.com. I
You
like
got
to
a
engage.
Do you have a summit coming up?
I'm gonna schedule one in LA, home court advantage, first quarter of next year.
Great.
So it's not. I don't have the date yet, but yeah, I'm coming back home. It's been a while. We did New York and Spain, and I haven't done one in LA in a couple years. So
Yeah. And I would really recommend anyone listening to sign up for the Deuce newsletter
oh, thanks.
because there's more than just the workout. There's always a thoughtful piece.
Oh,
That
thank you.
It's your newsletter and Seth Godin, the only two I read on a regular
Yo,
basis.
that's a crazy sentence you just said. That's a crazy sentence you just said. Seth Godin is the
Don't you know
goat.
I'm local?
That's right.
Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you. This is great.
And that is it on today's episode. Thanks so much for hanging out. Your time and attention never goes unappreciated. If anything in today's show stood out to you, I encourage you to share it to social and tag me. That is how you can help a little independent show like mine grow. And of course, rate, review, and subscribe to Eat, Play, Crush wherever it is you get your podcasts. If you want to follow me, I'm at Paleo Chef on social media, or the show at Eat, Play, Crush. You want to stay in touch via my newsletter or get your hands on the gut reset, visit eatplaycrush.com. And until next time, be well, do good, and trust your gut.